Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Matt Train from eBridge Connections and I'm pleased that you have joined us for today's webinar. Our topic today is responsive design, what it is and why it's so important now. eBridge Connections is teaming up with industry partners and experts to deliver a series of informative webinars on the strategies being used in e-commerce today. This webinar is the first in this series on and we hope you find it helpful as we have planned to host a number of future webinars and with other relevant e-commerce topics. We would like to thank our industry partner Redstage and guest presenter Adam Morris for developing and delivering today's presentation. Adam is a co-founder and the current CEO of Redstage, which is an e-commerce solutions agency specializing in Magento websites. Adam also is currently a co-founder or board member of 3 additional startups and has previously run an online liquidations company. He is often a speaker and guest lecturer at various events and universities on the topics of e-commerce, internet marketing, and entrepreneurship. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded and a link to the webinar video will be emailed to each registrant within a week. During the presentation, feel free to submit any questions you have and we'll try to answer as many of them as possible at the end of the webinar. Before we move into Adam's presentation, I would like to provide you with a brief introduction to eBridge Connections. eBridge Connections has over 20 years experience in the accounting integration industry. We were founded in 1993 by our current CEO, Colin Brown, and are based in Burlington, Ontario, Canada. eBridge specializes in delivering both cloud-based and on-premise integration solutions for businesses of all sizes. Our universal integration platform connects over 40 accounting systems to 20 different e-commerce carts, thousands of EDI trading partners, and the leading CRM applications. eBridge integration solutions automate vital business processes, eliminating the need for manual data entry. We build, maintain, and support our own solutions and do not rely on any third-party software. Our service plans are based on an annual rate only, thus there are no per transaction charges. Our core competency is delivering integration solutions that enable seamless data flows between systems. Businesses with an eBridge solution in place are able to eliminate data entry and avoid costly mistakes, maintain data consistency across business systems, expedite order fulfillment and improve the customer experience, and reduce costs and free up valuable resources. I'm now going to pass off the presentation to Adam, who's going to inform you all about the benefits of responsive design. Welcome, Adam. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us today, especially those that whoops, hold on. Sorry, guys. Just give me 1 second. My screen just flickered. Thank you for joining us today, especially those that ran back from watching the World Cup game to join us and talk a little bit about responsive design here. That's the okay, show. Sorry about that, guys. It switched screens on me of which one I wanted to make the main screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the proper screen now. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so today we're going to talk about responsive design a little bit, why it's so important now. First, just a brief introduction to Redstage. We were founded in 2005. We are an e-commerce agency that specializes in Magento design, development, and support services. We've worked on over 300 Magento sites to this point, and most of our staff here has real-world backgrounds in e-commerce and client services. Just a breadth of our services, it's mostly 2 sides. We design, build, integrate, consult, and train on new e-commerce sites, especially replatforming projects, and we also support existing e-commerce sites. So why responsive design? Right now, all indicators are pointing up for mobile usage and mobile shopping. Okay, so we've had pretty much a steady increase. If we were talking a few years ago, we were actually telling our clients, let's take a wait and see approach. We were seeing clients with, maybe 2, 3, 5% of mobile and tablet usage, and since then we've seen those numbers skyrocket. So if we look at Black Friday of 2013, almost 40% of traffic was from a mobile device, and that's an increase of 30% year over year. And we see that trend continuing, if not increasing. Now, we are taking some real-world stats as well from our clients, and our clients are seeing anywhere from 30 to 50% of their traffic from mobile devices. Some of our largest clients are even seeing 55 to 60% from smartphones and tablets. So, and having a solid mobile approach is a significant competitive advantage now. Only 2% of the IR 500 currently have responsive sites, and 38% have no mobile strategy at all. So before we talk about what responsive is, let's talk a little bit about some actual results from responsive redesigns. So these are real-world examples. These are clients of ours. The first being First and Coffee. When we relaunched their site as responsive, their smartphone and tablet traffic was up 38% conversion rate, up 10% on tablet and 23% on smartphones. Average order value up 12% on tablet and 3% on smartphones. And the kicker here is revenue was up 48% on tablet and 75% on smartphones. Now, if you're getting about 50% of your traffic from mobile devices, that's a pretty big jump. Okay, the next example is a company called GTR. This was actually a pretty huge increase. Conversion rate up 180% on tablet and 153% on smartphones, resulting in revenue up 45% on tablet and 42% on smartphones. Okay, so let's talk about what the benefits of responsive design are and what it offers. First is it's a streamlined, consistent experience across all devices. So what we coined a phrase here at Redstage called shopping autopilot. And what shopping autopilot means is when a customer gets to a site, you don't want them to have to consciously think about how to navigate your site. Okay, you want them to be able to fluidly navigate, because sort of any time the customer has to start making those conscious decisions, they may decide that they don't need whatever it is they're shopping for and abandon their search period. So you want to make things as fluid as possible. And responsive design offers that consistent brand experience, whether if they're accessing it on a smartphone first and then they move to their desktop computer to finish the purchase, or vice versa, they take it with them, they're going to have that consistent experience and be able to easily navigate the site. Responsive also gives you 100% of the desktop functionality on mobile. So before responsive design, when we used to have, say, M.dot sites or just mobile-specific, tablet-specific sites, the conversation was always how much of the functionality of the desktop site can we translate to the mobile experience. Okay. Now, by design, responsive sites will offer all of the functionality of your desktop site onto the mobile experience, because it is adapting that experience to the device. It's adapting the main website to the device. Also, when you're we had clients that struggled in this separate M.dot site and tablet site world, because every time they had to make updates and changes, it was a very complicated process. They would have to implement the changes, do test and QA on basically separate different sites, separate technologies, and in some cases in completely separate languages. There are also SEO benefits. This is a little bit of a debatable topic at this point. Basically, the theory is that you're having one website that is adapting to the device rather than an M.dot site, subdomain, or different themes, which could confuse Google. The argument against is now there are ways to tell Google that it's the same site and it's the same content and all of that. But for us, we want to use the keep it simple principle and say, okay, if you have everything on one site, you're directing all of your Google juice to one site. You don't have to maintain all of these workarounds for your SEO, for your SEO strategy. So we still think that there's an improvement there. Okay, let's do a little bit of a responsive overview and a couple of definitions. So some of the terms that you might have heard so far is responsive, adaptive, and progressive. What a responsive site is as you change, the site automatically adapts to the viewport. Okay, let's define viewport first. So a viewport would be either a desktop viewport, a smartphone viewport, or a tablet viewport. Sometimes there are additional viewports that are defined, tablet landscape versus tablet portrait, for instance, but those are the main three. Now, what the goal of responsive design is to be able to make the site appropriate for any of these particular sizes. So basically, responsive and adaptive are just slightly separate approaches. It's also, since this is in a little bit in its infancy, you'll hear people use these interchangeably, and some people have different definitions than others. But the definition that we use is that a responsive site fluidly changes based on the viewport or size of the browser. So if you're looking at a responsive site and you maximize it versus minimize it on the window, you'll see the website automatically snap and will fluidly change. And actually, you can take your browser and drag the window to be larger and smaller, and you can kind of see the website fitting around and changing. What adaptive is adaptive generally will understand the size of the viewport first, and in the background tailor the site and then output the optimized experience to that site. So if you drag your browser, it's not going to be resizing on the fly. It is kind of already created that and outputted to the browser. And progressive design, arguments here as well, but basically progressive enhancement is another word that you might have heard. That really encompasses both responsive and adaptive. It's the theory of creating a site that provides a consistent experience across multiple devices. Okay, and then there's some frameworks that are used in responsive design, which is basically aids for us in creating responsive sites, and there isn't quite exactly a standard yet, but the two most popular ones that you'll see used are Bootstrap and Foundation. All right, so here's what responsive isn't. Basically, it's not bolting a mobile and tablet solution onto your existing site. What that means is there will be a redesign, redevelopment process for at least the theme part of your site. The older type of mobile strategy would be to bolt an MDOT site or a tablet-specific experience that would be displayed when those devices are selected. This, since it is a new theme or a new design that is meant to adapt to all sizes. Responsive also might not be fast or simple. Okay, so actually to have a site that is automatically adapting to all of these devices, there generally is more complexity and more elements on the page. So you do have to be concerned about site speed, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Also, the development and QA time. So even though you're really designing one site, there are still multiple complexities involved, and the QA time definitely balloons when you're going to be testing for not only the desktop sites, but different smartphones with different browsers, different tablets, different browsers. There actually can be quite a lot more. I think we have, it's usually around 7 or 8 times the amount of QA hours that we use before we launch a responsive site than, say, a non-responsive site. Responsive also might not be a solution for some specific experiences like software as a service apps, news, social networks, etc. And really what that means is, so an advantage of responsive is that it's going to give you 100% of the functionality across all devices. Now, some web apps or software as a service apps, they actually want to add additional functionality that is appropriate to the specific device. So, I mean, a very basic example is Facebook's mobile site or mobile app. You can use the camera built into the tablet, for instance. That's not going to be something that would happen on a desktop site. So you might want a specific experience for that. Same with magazines and things like that. They really can be much more tailored to the device the person is using than simply scaling the site. So responsive does have a few danger areas as well. One of the things that we've seen, especially in early responsive design, everybody was in a rush to create new responsive designs, and we saw a lot of issues that turned up. What will happen is developers and designers will end up to try to make things quicker, not properly designed for the interface itself, for the size itself. I mean, here's a very good example. We saw one very popular responsive site that as it scaled down to a smartphone, the add to cart button simply scaled down with it proportionally. So on an iPhone 4, the add to cart button was actually too small to click on with your thumb, which pretty much makes the interface useless if the main goal is to be able to add something to cart. We actually call that the rule of thumb. If it's too small for your thumb, then it shouldn't be in a smartphone interface. So we also have different layout changes and A/B testing can become a little bit more costly because you're surrounding all of the elements on the page with things that make it responsive. So certain CMS features may not work quite so well because everything has to be encapsulated in responsive code. It is a little bit more time consuming. When you want to do an A/B test, you have to test that rollout across multiple devices. So just be aware that there might be additional cost in the future for rolling out a responsive design. And also responsive designs, your desktop design may not be able to be made into a responsive site, or at least with a reasonable budget. So a lot of times a redesign is necessary, which can be good and bad. If you have already significant investments in conversion and SEO practices, you have to be very careful that the new site will still have all of the advantages as your existing site. All right, let's talk a little bit about the process to get to responsive. So the first thing is, at Redstage here, we're mostly concerned about any efforts that you put into your site should have a positive return on investment. Okay, so the first thing is let's understand what that return on investment can be. Excuse me. So first is, if you do not have some sort of analytics hooked up to your website, that is the first thing to do, but we really need to know what percentage of your traffic is coming from mobile and smartphone, tablet and smartphone devices, and what the conversion rates on those devices are. Generally, what we find in a lot of cases is that a non-responsive site, so let's say a site without a mobile strategy, the smartphone conversion rate will be about a quarter of what the desktop conversion rate is, and the tablet conversion rate will be about half of what the desktop conversion rate is. So there's quite a lot of room to move up there. Okay, so when you're talking to whoever's going to be working on this responsive site, you're going to want to ask them what are metrics that their clients have seen for implementing a responsive design so that you can do an ROI calculation. From that ROI calculation, you can create a budget of how much you can invest in taking advantage of this mobile strategy. The other thing you're going to want to do is consider load times. Okay, so when somebody's shopping from a smartphone, they might be on a 3G, 4G, they might be on a budget phone that is going to be slower. So you're going to want to really look at your assets, say your photography, your ad banners, anything that's heavy media, videos, things like that, and figure out what the delivery system is there. You may want to sign up for a content delivery network that is going to offer faster delivery of that media. You may want to optimize those images a little bit better so that they're smaller size. And also, the last point is reducing complex scripts. Complex scripts can be difficult for, say, budget smartphones or older tablets to process and make your site very slow. And finally, you want to work with a partner that has a proven track record in responsive design. A lot of people are slapping up expertise in responsive design, but the results have been less than stellar. So you want somebody that can show you case studies of dramatic improvements in conversion rate from going responsive. So that's it. That's our introduction into responsive design. If anybody has any questions for me, please type them in the chat window, and I'll be happy to answer them. Hey, Matt, I think that might about wrap it up. If there aren't any questions, I think I'll hand the floor back to you.
Adam, can you hear me?
I can.
I do have a question here that came in. Does responsive design work on older browsers?
That's actually an interesting question. Responsive design can have problems, especially with older browsers, older Internet Explorer browsers. There are workarounds for IE9. There are libraries for IE8. It can get pretty complex to build in compatibility for those browsers. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at your analytics, determine what percentage of your usage comes from those types of browsers, and depending on the industry, it could really be across the board. So you really want to do an ROI calculation on that as well. Get a quote on adapting the responsive site to an older browser, and see what the difference in, if your conversion rate dropped on IE8, say, but it was only 1.5% of your traffic, that might really not be an impact or have a positive ROI for embarking on that.
Thank you. And one other question here. Should the whole site be responsive, or just pieces like, just having certain pieces like the blog not be responsive?
That's a good question. Really, you want everything on the site that you're intending the customer to interact with to be responsive. So, some sites obviously have SEO-specific blogs that really are not meant, which we at Redstage we recommend against, but of course a lot of sites have them, or SEO-specific content pages up that really are not meant to be used by a customer. In those cases, it doesn't really make sense to make them responsive and put the investment in, especially the blog, which might be on a different platform. However, if your entire site is made to be customer-facing and interacted with a customer, then you definitely want to have that whole interface consistently responsive.
Great. That wraps up all the questions for today. Thank you, Adam, again for presenting today. And I'd like to thank everyone that joined us as well. If you haven't already visited the Redstage or eBridge sites, we invite you to do that, or follow us on Twitter at eBridge Connects and Redstage. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.